Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at the Floor One Stretch S6 wet and dry vacuum cleaner from Tineco, which has one unique feature that's quite different from all the other Tincos. Let's find out more. Before we jump into the Floor One Stretch S6, a quick intro on what a wet and dry vacuum is. And if you already know that part, feel free to use the chapter selections below to skip to the next part. So essentially, a wet and dry vacuum cleaner is, as the name suggests, a vacuum cleaner that both vacuums your floor, but also cleans them with water, similar to cleaning your floors with a mop and water bucket, but much faster, more efficient, and more convenient. For starters, it's a two-in-one activity. Instead of first vacuuming all your floors and then running over a mop with a wet and dry vacuum, as you are vacuuming your floor, there's a rotating brush that is constantly being soaked with water, and it's going to be cleaning your floors at the same time. The other advantage with a traditional mop and water bucket, after some time the mop does get dirty. You have to constantly clean the mop, wring the mop, and whatnot. With a wet and dry vacuum cleaner, on the other hand, you're always cleaning with fresh water, and that's because the vacuum has two separate tanks, one with fresh water that is constantly feeding the brush roll, and another one for dirty water that's sucked back in. These two never mix, therefore you're always cleaning with fresh water. And then at the end of your cleaning session, you put the wet and dry vacuum cleaner back on the base, which is going to charge it, but also it runs a self-cleaning cycle that flushes the internal system and cleans the roller brush as well. And afterwards, it dries the roller brush so that you don't develop any bad odors or mildew. Now that we've covered what a wet and dry vacuum cleaner is, let's talk about this one from Tineco. This is the Floor One Stretch S6, and it's called Stretch because, well, it can stretch. Matter of fact, it's the first Tineco that can lie down completely flat on the floor at 180 degrees, which is great because this lets you go under furniture, under tables, under beds, to clean those areas which were otherwise impossible with other wet and dry vacuums, which traditionally cannot go very low because then the water would start leaking out. Tineco achieves that ability with two design changes. The first one, the clean water tank is now sitting low at the base of the vacuum rather than at the belly with other traditional wet and dry vacuums. And secondly, they have a 3-chamber dirty water separation system that prevents the dirty water from entering the motor, thus by allowing the vacuum to recline up to 180 degrees and completely lay flat on the ground and get to those hard to reach areas. As with Tineco's latest lineup of wet and dry vacuums like the S7, which I reviewed on the channel, and if you're interested in seeing that review, you can click over here to watch it. This also has the flash dry system, which is an awesome system. Now, as I said, many of those machines, once you put them on the base and they run the cleaning cycle, they also dry the brushes, but that often takes anywhere between 30 minutes up to several hours, depending on the model. With Tineco's flash dry system, it's only a 5-minute drying session, and it works pretty well. And there are two reasons why it works quite well. The first one, it blasts really hot air at 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius. That's how much Tineco advertises, and I actually tested that. And as you can see, it's very close to that advertised temperature. So on the one hand, there's that hot air that is continuously blasting on the roller brush, but also there's this plastic thing over here, which you put on the base that kind of provides a tight seal around the brush so that very little air escapes. So you have high volume air, hot temperature in a somewhat closed system. And this is why the drying cycle runs for 5 minutes and you get almost a 90 to 95% dry brush. This, of course, will depend on the ambient temperature in the room and the relative humidity in your room as well. But if the brush is not dry enough, you can run another drying cycle by pressing and holding the mode button on the vacuum cleaner. And this is going to run an additional 3-minute drying session that should ensure that your brush is completely dry. Another thing Tineco advertises is hot water cleaning of the brush to dissolve deep stains and grime. Now, in my tests, this was not really the case. Similar to what the S7 Switch had, there really is no hot water over here. And unfortunately, this is a case if false advertising or misleading advertising, which unfortunately many manufacturers are opting to do. And after testing this multiple times, it became evident that the idea behind this is not that the water itself is being heated, but rather during that cleaning cycle, they're still blasting that hot 70 degree or 158 degree Fahrenheit hot air on the brush as it is being cleaned with water, which is a bit problematic. 70 degree hot air blasting on running water, which is at room temperature, does not make the water hot water. Water has a much higher heat capacity than air, which means it takes more energy to heat water than air. Also, the water that's cleaning the brush is constantly being fed, so it's kind of like running water. So if you're blasting hot air for a split second on this running water, it's not going to do anything to raise the temperature of the water. While I'm fine with that, my issue is that misleading advertising, which they keep broadcasting, saying that they're cleaning with hot water and that's going to help dissolve grime and dirt and it's going to deep clean the brush. That's completely false. There is no hot water, it's just regular water, which again, I'm fine with, but I'd rather you be more transparent in your advertising rather than somewhat misleading. Having said that, I'm at least happy that the drying actually works. It is as advertised at 158 Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius, and it actually works and dries the brush roll quite well. Now let's talk about the cleaning performance of this machine. And I want to start with something that I noticed after reviewing the S7, which is the wheels or the assisted wheels. So their S7 had a bi-directional self-propulsion system. That's the wheels would propel the machine forward when you're pushing or backwards when you're pulling, making cleaning a bit easier because instead of you having to apply a lot of force to push that machine, the wheels are assisting you in that motion. The S6 Stretch unfortunately does not have that, and it just has regular wheels. Now there is still some form of propulsion because the brush that is rotating is actually propelling the machine a little bit forward, but it is noticeably less of a propulsion than with those bidirectional assisted wheels. Also, this only works obviously when you're pushing the machine forward because the brush is rotating forward. When you're pulling the machine, there is no assistance there, whereas with the bidirectional propulsion system on the S7, even if you pull the machine backwards, the wheels are going to detect that and they're going to start rotating backwards as well, assisting your motion. But again, while I did notice the difference right away, it was easier than I expected, partly because of that brush that's actually helping you propel, but also because of the weight distribution. So with the S6, as I said, the water tank is on the base rather than on the belly of the machine. So the machine has a lower center of gravity and the weight distribution is actually better. So the impact on not having those propelled wheels is actually less than I thought. And tilting the machine all the way down to 180 degrees works like a charm. It's actually really easy to do, and it's quite helpful to get under chairs, tables, beds, furniture, and whatnot. Now, while this was easy to maneuver, I found the head pivot was not that great. It pivots at around 45 degrees, which isn't bad, but I've tried other machines whose head would pivot a little bit more, making the maneuverability a little bit easier. The machine has 3 different modes. There's auto mode, which runs the machine on low power, but then there's a sensor that detects any debris, and as soon as it does, it kicks the machine into higher power, and it gives you a visual illustration on the screen with that red circle bar increasing. There's also max mode, which kicks the machine into full power and the most water usage as well. And there's also floor drying mode, which does not dispense any water, but rather just rotates the brush and sucks any water that's on the floor. There's a 4th custom mode, which you can get to if you download the app and connect the machine to your Wi-Fi. And in that mode, you can customize the speed, but also the amount of water that is being dispensed. Now, I did run a few tests with certain messes, starting off with milk and cereal. And as you can see from the first run, it had absolutely no issue sucking up all that milk and the larger chunks of cereal. I also wanted to test how well it can remove stuck-on stains, so I poured some coffee on the floor and let it dry over 12 hours, and as you can see, that's a dried-on stain, and from the first pass, it was able to remove all that stuck-on stain of coffee, which was great. And then I kind of did a stress test by also putting some ketchup on the floor and letting it dry over 12 hours. Now, as you know, ketchup stains are very difficult to remove. So while the machine was able to remove them all, it did take a lot of passes to get all the mess out, which was expected, but at least it got everything out eventually. I also did a test with honey. From the first pass, it got all the honey out, but I ran another 2 or 3 passes just to make sure there's no stickiness. And as you can see, there's absolutely no stickiness left on the floor after just a few passes. Once I was done cleaning, I emptied the dirty water tank, and here was another nice surprise. There's a filter to catch the solid debris inside the dirty water tank, which is quite common with those machines, because if you want to dump the dirty water down your toilet, but you don't want to also throw in the solid pieces, that filter is going to catch them. This was one of the better filters of all the machines I've tested. It's quite large and it did a really good job at catching all the solid debris, as you can see. Once done, I put the machine back on the base for that self-cleaning cycle. So it runs a 7-minute cycle, which includes 2 minutes of cleaning the brush and then 5 minutes of drying the brush. And this is what the brush looked like after that cleaning session. And as you can see, it is stained with ketchup. So the red on that brush is quite evident. Let's see what happened after the cleaning session. And after those 7 minutes, I was a little bit disappointed with the cleaning. The brush was definitely cleaner, but the ketchup stains were still somewhat there. It wasn't bad, but I was hoping for more stain removal. If you take a look at the water in the dirty water tank after the cleaning session, you see how dirty it is. So that session actually did clean the brush. Look at the color of the water that was extracted from the brush. So it does clean, but it does leave some stains, especially when it's something like ketchup. So here are my thoughts on the S6 Stretch. That 180-degree tilt ability, I think, is really great and really important, and that's why a lot of manufacturers are now introducing wet and dry vacuum cleaners that have that lay flat ability. Roborock is introducing the Flexi Pro, and Dreamy has the H14, both of which can lay flat on the ground, and the cleaning performance was pretty good as well. I do miss the bi-directional self-propelled wheels, but I found that actually using the machine was just ever so slightly less comfortable than with those self-propelled wheels, so this wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. The hot air drying works great, and this is one of the things I love about these Tincos. With 5 minutes, or worst case 8 minutes, if you run the second cycle of 3 minutes, you get a completely dry brush, so that part I actually really like. So I actually really like the S6 Stretch. The only thing I'm not a big fan of is the price, so it is a bit expensive at $600, though there are regular promotions on this machine. Matter of fact, there was one right now at the moment of recording this video. I will put links in the description to the product page. These are affiliate links, so if you do decide to purchase this machine, I would appreciate if you would go through my links. I may earn a small commission on some purchases at no extra cost to you. This would greatly help support the channel. So all in all, if you don't mind paying the price, I think it's a really good machine, especially with its ability to lay flat. As I said, I will be reviewing the Roborock Flexi Pro and the Dreamy H14, both of which have the same ability, and I'll probably also make a comparison video comparing all three. So if you're interested in watching that, make sure you subscribe to my channel to get notified when I release that video. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, as this encourages me to continue producing content. Until next time, cheers.